Discover the incredible moment a billionaire uncovers a touching secret at his daughter's grave. Edward Hayes stood alone in the cemetery, a bleak October sky overcast with impending rain. The world around him, usually vibrant and busy, faded in importance. At that moment, filled with mere sorrow, he felt the tender weight of loss pressing against his chest, a reminder of how utterly consumed he had been by ambition. His only daughter, Annie, the joy of his life, was gone. Her laughter, her gentle push to be better, and her dreams all lingered in the air, haunting him. He knelt before her grave, the granite cool and solid beneath his fingertips, struggling to reconcile the disconnect between the great heights of his career and the emptiness of his heart. With petals scattered near the headstone, he placed freshly picked flowers atop it, each of them representing the warmth of her spirit. As he arranged them, something unusual caught his attention, an envelope tucked beneath the blooms. His hands shook as he pried it free, letting gravity take over the sealed edge. Inside was a letter, Anna's graceful handwriting spilling forth on the pages as if she had just written it days ago. "Dear Dad," it began, and he felt a rush of warmth intertwining with an intense guilt. The letter outlined her secret ambition to create a foundation aimed at providing underprivileged children access to education, a world where every child had a chance to succeed, to dream even. Stunned, Edward's mind twisted with remorse. How had he never seen the horizon of struggles lapping just outside his glass towers? They had often discussed possibilities over dinners filled with extravagant entrees, her visions juxtaposed against the empire he had built. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. His breath quickened as the weight of Annie's aspirations pressed against his conscience. The skyscrapers that had once promised fulfillment now felt like melting idols, symbols of hollow victories. Each accomplishment he'd celebrated before felt tarnished, diminished against the brilliance of her dream. Driven by guilt, he made the audacious choice to reach out to Lisa, a teacher he'd only heard whispers about, dedicated, fiercely protective of her students. Their first meeting was electric, laden with skepticism. Lisa eyed him warily, a fortress built from years of disappointment. As they exchanged words, tension ignited the air. Edward pushed to confront the unjust socio-economic issues around education, while Lisa maneuvered around the skepticism of wealthy benefactors' promises. This was foreign territory for him. He found himself questioning every privilege he'd ever assumed, every battle he'd fought for his own success. The change he sought collided with the community's own fears. Opposition from local officials raised questions he had never considered. He felt the walls closing in, the urgency of his daughter's legacy fueling a voice inside him that had long been muted by ambition. The tension escalated to a point where it felt invasive, leaving him gasping for clarity as anger and desperation entwined. Would he continue down the path paved by his privilege, or step into the uncertain arena of change, battling not merely for wealth, but the soul of a community desperate for acknowledgement? As the final confrontation loomed, Edward clenched his fists, his resolve wavering but igniting with ambition and fear in equal measure. The grave beneath him became the starting line of a race against time, loaded with the vivid memories of Annie's belief in him. Edward needed to find the courage to speak her vision aloud to a community that had always felt like a distant echo. Would he collapse like a house of cards, or dare to confront his most profound fear, failure in the eyes of Annie's spirit? The stakes were high, and the shadows of his past loomed large as he prepared to step into a destiny irrevocably altered. Edward arrived at the community center early the next day, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare that felt almost accusatory. He was drenched in uncertainty, not knowing how his intentions would be received. He had spent the night revisiting Annie's letter, mapping out the conversation, how he would express his newfound commitment to establishing her foundation, an organization that would embody her dreams and serve the children she wanted to help. As he gathered his thoughts, doubt crept in, gnawing at his resolve. Would they even believe he meant it, or would they see him as just another rich man looking to alleviate his guilt by throwing money at their problems? The sensation of his heart racing matched the ambience around him, filled with the faded echoes of laughter and learning. Edward took a deep breath, feeling the stirrings of fear and determination collide. When Lisa entered, her demeanor was brisk, a no-nonsense energy that contrasted sharply with his own inner turmoil. He remembered her sharp gaze, scanning him as if deciphering his hidden motives. Today, however, he came armed not just with resources, but with a vulnerable truth, a promise he intended to fulfill. "Edward," she greeted, folding her arms over her chest. Immediate tension crackled in the air, reflected in her watchful posture. "Lisa," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm here today to talk about Annie's foundation. I want to listen. I need to understand." She remained silent, waiting for him to elaborate. The expectant silence heightened the pressure in his chest. "I realize now that my success has often blinded me to the inequities that exist, especially in education. I've been so consumed with building my empire that I didn't see the needs around me." Her eyes narrowed, lowering her defenses slightly. "And you think throwing money at the problem will fix it?" "No," the word burst forth, filled with conviction. "I want to contribute meaningfully. I want to partner with you and this community in a way that empowers rather than dictates. I know I have a lot to learn." Lisa studied him, her brow twitching with skepticism. "Words are easy, Edward. You have to prove you're not just here for a photo opportunity or a tax write-off." Edward nodded, taking her challenge straight to heart. "What do you need? What would make a real difference?" The question felt monumental, poised to redefine their dynamic. "Trust," she replied, her voice measured but direct, "and transparency. You don't get to erase the past, but you can show you're willing to work alongside the community. We need more than just another empty promise or superficial funding." Edward felt the weight of choice looming large. He was acutely aware of the walls he'd erected throughout his life, barriers woven tightly from ambition and privilege. Now he had the opportunity, albeit a daunting one, to dismantle them. "Okay," he said, determination bubbling within him. "What does it mean to build that trust?" Lisa smiled for the first time, a subtle push against her armor. "Start by introducing yourself, Edward. Not as a billionaire, but as a father who's just lost a daughter. Share what she meant to you, how her dreams inspired you. If you want to connect, you have to come down to our level." In that moment of vulnerability, Edward realized it was more than just a mission to help others. It was a journey to find his own humanity, buried under years of calculated gains. As he opened up about Annie, her laughter, her aspirations, he felt the ghost of his daughter beside him, urging him forward. The room, once a battleground of doubt, transformed into a place of hope and mutual understanding. But even in that shared moment, an unsettling question buzzed incessantly in his mind. Could he truly shift the narrative, or would he still fail to rise above the shadows of privilege? With every shared story, every ounce of vulnerability, a new sense of urgency arose within him. The moment of truth was approaching, and little did he know that the hardest part, one far beyond funding, was about to materialize, facing those who viewed him as the embodiment of their struggle, not just the solution. Would he crumble under the weight of their expectations? The inner turmoil was palpable as he fortified himself for what lay ahead. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the remnants of uncertainty that lingered in Edward's mind. He stood before Lisa, feeling the adrenaline of their conversation still coursing through him. The air, now less suffocating, seemed charged with the electricity of potential transformation. Edward sensed a shift. Their dialogue was more than mere words. It felt like an awakening. "I want to do this the right way," Edward confessed, the weight of his resolve pressing against his chest. "I need to understand how to listen, but more importantly, how to act. What are the community's needs? What obstacles do they face?" Lisa leaned forward, her expression softening, revealing a flicker of interest. "Our children need mentorship and resources, things that foster enthusiasm for learning. Many of their parents work multiple jobs. They can't always help with schoolwork or engage with their kids' education. We need people who are willing to get hands-on, not just write checks." The words resonated deeply within him, igniting a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Edward acknowledged the privilege that had sheltered him from such struggles, yet now he was determined to thrust himself into the reality others face daily. "I'll organize a tutoring program," he proposed, allowing the idea to take shape. "But I want to do it with you, alongside the teachers and parents, not through a third party. I want this to be genuine." Lisa scrutinized him, gauging the sincerity behind his offer. "It's easier said than done. You have to be willing to get dirty, emotionally and physically. This community has been let down too many times. You'll need to show up, not just occasionally, but consistently." His heart quickened at the thought of actual involvement, but taking meaningful action thrilled him. The feelings swirling inside, remnants of sorrow and longing, began morphing into a determination he had never quite embraced before. "I understand. I'm ready to dive in. I'll be here after work every week, no exceptions." Her smile widened, although doubt still flickered in her eyes. "Let's see if you can follow through." He could sense the challenge she posed, but this time he viewed it through a lens of hope rather than dread. Edward needed to be tested, to be stretched. As they discussed the logistics of their emerging program, a strange kinship began to blossom between them, fueled by their shared commitment to shaping a better future. By the end of their meeting, Edward felt lighter, as if unveiling himself had shed not only weight, but layers of regret. It was time to redefine his narrative, no longer bogged down by guilt, but engaged and invested. Determined to continue the momentum, he left the complex, promising himself to learn the names and stories of the children. Every step away felt significant, like moving toward the edge of something vast and unknown. He could almost hear Annie's laughter leading him onward. Yet beneath the surface, uncertainty coiled. He grappled with the prospect of meeting the children. What if they saw him only as the wealthy stranger? Would they trust him to mentor them? He envisioned their skeptical eyes fixed on him, assessing his every intention. Edward paused, leaning against his car, contemplating the challenge ahead. Did he regret this path? Certainly not. But would the weight of expectation from Lisa, the community, and especially the children be too much to bear? The conundrum gripped him tightly. That evening, he arrived at Annie's grave, the solitude welcoming yet heavy. He wished he could ask her what she would have wanted him to do now. Standing there, he promised to honor her memory by pursuing the legacy she had envisioned. But he couldn't shake the creeping doubt that maybe he wasn't equipped to fulfill the promise he was making. He thought about his imminent first meeting with the children, the few eager faces he perceived filled with hope. Could he rise to the occasion? Soon he would find out, for fate had a way of testing the bravest of souls. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows across the cemetery, Edward felt the moment of truth closing in, where aspirations and actions would collide. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet his determination burned brighter than ever as he whispered a promise he hoped to keep. Then a voice broke through the silence, sending chills down his spine. "Mr. Lawson, is that you?" As he turned, he was met with a pair of curious eyes, one that looked all too familiar. Edward's heart raced as he turned to face the voice of the young girl standing before him. Her innocent yet piercing eyes were an echo of his late daughter's. A tremor of recognition twisted through him, blending sorrow and curiosity. She looked perhaps 10, and her presence felt enveloping, yet it pierced through the cloud of uncertainty that had plagued him all day. "Yes, it's me," he managed to say, swallowing hard. "What's your name?" She replied, her eyes locking onto his, revealing not only innocence but a hint of apprehension. The way she stood, a small figure poised before the gravestone, sparked an odd mixture of discomfort and connection within Edward. "Do you come here often?" he asked, unsure why he pursued the conversation. She shifted her weight nervously. "Sometimes, Her words faltered. "I wanted to see if you were real." Edward blinked, taken aback. Did she think he was a ghost, or was it something deeper? It hit him then. This was not mere curiosity. Mia had formed a connection to the stories tied to his daughter, who had touched lives in ways he had long forgotten. In that moment he recognized the silent bond they shared, grappling with loss and longing. "What do you mean, if I'm real?" he inquired, his voice softening, keenly aware of the fragility of this exchange. Mia hesitated, shifting from one foot to the other. "People talk about you, you know. They say you're a good man for coming back here. I thought maybe you needed to see that she's still here." His heart clenched at her words. Anne's legacy loomed large, and yet he'd been paralyzed by his grief and self-doubt. Mia was here, carrying Annie's spirit in her small frame, reminding him of his purpose. "I do need that," Edward admitted, surprised by the raw honesty spilling from him. "I've been lost for a while." They stood quietly together, the weight of their shared grief underpinning the stillness. In this moment, he understood that the path he had set upon with Lisa and the children was not merely about giving, perhaps it was about receiving, too. Mia's presence illuminated a truth. He needed connection, guidance, and the perspective only the young could provide. "How would you feel about helping me with the tutoring program I want to start?" he then suggested, his heart drumming nervously. "I think the kids could benefit from someone their age." Her eyes flickered with confusion and excitement. "You want me to help?" "Yes," he affirmed, noting how her burden could ease his own. "You could be invaluable. You see things from a different angle, what kids like and what they need. I could use that wisdom." Mia stared at him, her expression softening. He sensed she saw the sincerity behind his words, much as Lisa had. "Okay," she smiled, a spirit of hope illuminating her small face. "But you have to promise to show up. I won't let you be like the other grown-ups who vanish." His chest tightened with the promise he made, each word more than mere obligation. It was a commitment he rarely had the chance to make since losing Annie. "I promise, Mia, I'll always be here." As she grinned, Edward's own heart brimmed with a fragile joy. Their connection felt like a lifeline, a chance to navigate the rocky terrain of his hesitations together. Perhaps he could learn from her as much as she would from him. "Can we go talk about it now?" she asked, practicality interspersing her optimism. "Absolutely," he replied, feeling a warmth wash over him as they walked away from the grave. Edward was no longer just facing the remnants of loss. He was stepping into a future reshaped by connection and purpose. In that transformative moment, he felt the whisper of change. Shadows receded as light filled the spaces of his heart. But even as he embraced this newfound resolve, doubt lurked, teasing his commitment. What challenges would await him as he stepped into this role? Would he truly be able to forge authentic connections with the other children, or was Mia's trust misplaced? The questions hung heavily as they moved forward, anticipation crackling in the air. In their journey together, it became clear that while Edward sought to heal the hearts of others, he too was being healed. And just as the dawn of possibility broke, he noticed a group of children nearby, eyes wide and expectant. They were waiting for something, Probably him. With a deep breath, he pushed the doubts aside. Mia, why don't you share something too? Her eyes widened in surprise before she rallied herself. Okay, I can. As she recounted a story about a small creature who fought against terrible odds, Edward felt a profound shift occurring within him. He watched her navigate her tale, the power of her words weaving between reality and dreams, capturing the attention of the children and, unknowingly, his own heart. Through her, he began to recognize the influence of vulnerability and trust, the very elements he had avoided for far too long. Suddenly, he comprehended how much Mia believed in the bond they were building. Wasn't that what he was searching for all along? But just when he thought the moment was perfect, a girl from the group piped up with a question that pierced through his joy. "What do we do if you leave like the others?" There it was, the raw honesty that made his heart stutter. There was still that dark shadow whispering that his commitment might falter. "Let me show you that I'm here for the long run. Every time," he stammered, but the doubt hung heavy in the air, anchoring him back to his fears. The children continued their chatter, yet Edward could feel the potential weight of that question reshaping the gravity of what he had begun to build. It was not just his ability to teach or share. It was the relationship he now realized was on the brink of either hope or despair. What would it take for him to build the trust he so craved, not just from these children, but from himself? As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the ground, a new challenge loomed, not just to fulfill his promise, but to confront his deepest fears head-on. Would he rise to the occasion, or would old habits pull him back into isolation? Edward's resolve was about to be put to the ultimate test, and he could feel the moment approaching rapidly. The next morning, Edward awoke with remnants of anxiety clinging to him like heavy fog. The events of the previous day swirled in his thoughts, and the children's faces, filled with hope yet shadowed by skepticism, haunted him. Was he truly ready to commit to this role they needed him to fill? Each sunbeam that slanted through his window echoed his indecision. Would he give them another part of himself, or keep retreating into the comfort of solitude? He rose from bed, a familiar routine easing his mind temporarily. Still, as he prepared for today's session, his heart quickened. He dressed carefully, choosing a soft blue shirt, the color his daughter had loved, and stepped outside into the brisk morning air. The world felt more vibrant, charged with possibility, yet tinged with the weight of his lingering doubts. Upon arriving at the spot where the children would gather, Edward noticed Mia already there, her energy buoyant as she playfully debated with a few kids about the merits of superheroes versus wizards. He was struck by how effortlessly she connected with them, her laughter blending seamlessly with theirs, granting him both admiration and envy. As he approached, he noticed a change ripple through the group. Children turned to him, eyes wide with anticipation, but also with the vulnerability of their previous question weighing in the air. Would he dare to breach the gap? With a deep inhale, he forged ahead. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted, his voice steadier than he felt. "Are we ready to share more stories today?" The children erupted in eager nods and murmurs, the tension breaking and a hint of joy returning to his heart. Yet he sensed something deeper lingering just beneath the surface. The girl who had asked about his permanence, Lily, looked at him with that same piercing gaze. "Will you promise to stay?" blurted Lily, the innocence of her question hitting him like a sharp jab in the gut. Edward hesitated, the joy dissipating as doubt flooded back. What could he say that would reassure her? The truth sat heavy on his tongue, the truth that he himself wasn't sure of his commitment yet. But he recalled the vibrant imaginations they had shared. He remembered Mia's unwavering belief in their connection, and he decided then he could not feed their fears with his uncertainty. "I promise that I will do my best to be here for you," he said, feeling a clarity of purpose settle within him. "I want to help you learn and grow, just as you helped me." Mia glanced at him, a mixture of pride and encouragement shining in her eyes. The children offered shy smiles, their eyes flickering with a shared understanding that despite his imperfections, Edward was attempting to forge a bond crafted from integrity. As they began to immerse themselves in stories, Edward felt a warmth spread within him. Sharing stories calmed his nerves while allowing a sense of vulnerability to envelop the group. He asked them to pair up, encouraging them to discuss their tales before sharing them with the larger group. The children dove in, bubbling with laughter and animated gestures. As they engaged, Edward noticed a spark igniting in their eyes, a connection forming that transcended his fears and insecurities. He realized he didn't need to have everything figured out. Perhaps all he needed was to show up without pretense and allow himself to be seen. Hours flew by, and the more the children spoke, the more Edward found himself evolving alongside them. They weren't just students, they were allies in an uncharted territory where vulnerability acted as both a risk and a reward. For the first time, he questioned the narrative he had internalized for so long, that of a solitary figure on the periphery. Together, they had crafted an atmosphere pulsating with acceptance. However, lurking beneath the day's success was a shadow of fear. What if he became invested in this connection just to have to abandon it? The knowledge that the fear of leaving might paralyze him struck Edward hard, and it brought forth the memories of past losses. As he prepared to bid goodbye after the afternoon session, tension twisted in his gut. He glanced down at the children, all smiling, and felt a pang of dread. With every moment moving forward was a possibility of potential loss. "See you tomorrow," he called, but in his heart he silently questioned whether tomorrow would come without that same looming shadow over him. The air crackled with possibility, and though he felt buoyed by newfound connections, doubt danced just beyond his periphery. His commitment would be tested in ways he can only begin to understand. What would it take for Edward to confront the specter of his past and truly commit to the bonds he had begun to forge? The dawning realization that he must choose to trust not only the children, but himself as well, brought a fresh wave of both anxiety and determination. As he walked away, Edward could feel the quiet gnawing of his own question echoing louder within him. Was he prepared for the long run, or was he now simply delaying the inevitable? The next morning, Edward's feet felt heavier than usual as he trudged through the familiar path to the meeting spot. The events from yesterday's session loomed large in his mind, fueling uncertainty that threatened to overwhelm him. Even after the energy-filled connection with the children, a nagging fear whispered doubts into his ears. What if today was different? What if this time he couldn't maintain the momentum? Waking up that day, he hoped the echoes of last week's laughter would drown out his worries, but they persisted as shadows in his peripheral vision. He forced himself to dress purposefully, choosing a bright orange sweater, a color that resonated with warmth and optimism. The fabric was soft yet sturdy, just like he hoped to be with the children, not overly vulnerable, but full of life and readiness. Upon arrival, Edward found Mia already chatting with a few early-comers about the heroes they created in their imaginations. Clusters of kids swirled around her, their faces lit up as they shared wild and exaggerated stories. Each child that looked his way was a reminder of the bond he needed to honor, and their hopeful anticipation deepened the weight in his chest. Were he to falter today, would those expectant faces dim? Pushing through his apprehension, Edward summoned a grin and stepped forward. "Good morning, everyone." The kids turned their attention to him, and he could see the flickering of hope shimmering in their eyes, mirroring his own internal struggle. "Are we ready to explore today's stories together?" The chorus of yeses rang in chorus, mingling with the lingering laughter. But lingering uncertainty clawed at him. This time he wanted to offer more than promises. He wished to provide authenticity, to be a rock amid their innocent chaos. "Today," he announced, trying to steady his trembling voice, "I want to shake things up a little. Instead of just telling stories, let's think about the characters we wish we could be. I want you to draw your character and tell us what makes them special." The children's excitement turned palpable. As they scrambled for paper and crayons, Edward felt a tingle roll through him, a burgeoning excitement that mirrored theirs. Transforming the usual storytelling into a visual exploration nudged him forward. As the crayons moved across the pages, Edward wandered among the kids, observing their fervent concentration. There was Jamie, which he'd previously dismissed as shy, now fully immersed, grinning widely as he smudged green crayon into a dragon's scales. And Lily, the girl he had worried about just yesterday, deftly spun stories about her character, a superhero who surprisingly wielded the power of kindness. Lily caught Edward's eye, holding up her drawing with pride. "This is my superhero. She always helps others no matter what." Tears prickled at the corners of his eyes. It struck him. He was witnessing the children's evolution from passive participants to creators of their own narratives. This undeniably illuminated a truth within himself. Perhaps vulnerability was less about his own fears and more about embracing the courage these children displayed. Edward felt a revelation unfurling internally. Maybe, just maybe, he had the power to change his narrative too, to rewrite the story of isolation that had long shackled him. However, even as warmth filled the space around him, an unsettling thought gripped him. What if this newfound purpose was simply a fleeting moment of clarity amidst an endless cycle of indecision? What would happen when the children's energy waned, or if the bond he forged unraveled? Anxiety twisted tightly within him, a reminder of how easily things could change. As the session wore on and laughter erupted with each creative portrayal, Edward was forced to confront his own consequences. Would he risk his heart only to find it shattered once more? The lines around his resolve blurred again, the joy of connection tinged with the threat of pain. By the end of the day, the children gathered around him, their vibrant artwork sprawled across the grass. "Can we do this again tomorrow?" Lily piped up, her eyes shimmering with innocent hope. Swallowing his fear, Edward nodded, but doubt churned anew. Could he be the architect of a bond that truly lasted? Would tomorrow's shadow of anxiety envelop him once more, or could he embrace the strength he discovered amidst vulnerability? He walked away, their hopeful faces echoing in his mind, a haunting reminder of what he longed for but feared. The day's warmth clung to him, yet uncertainty hung heavier than ever. Could he remain steadfast against the potential of future heartache? With resolve trembling under pressure, Edward pondered as he stepped into the shade of the trees. How far would he go to confront the specter of his past and emerge stronger? The looming question loomed larger. Was it time to finally confront the foundation of his fears and discover the strength hidden within his vulnerability? As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting amber shadows along the pathway, Edward felt a blend of exhilaration and dread coursing through him. The children's joyful chatter faded, leaving him alone with his thoughts. How could he replicate this magic again tomorrow? The uncertainty loomed larger than their laughter, a specter that pricked at his resolve. Back at home, he found himself staring blankly at his reflection in the mirror, as if to interrogate the man staring back. Was it possible that he could craft these moments of connection consistently? The orange sweater still clung to him like a protective talisman, yet its warmth felt fleeting. What was this new version of himself he was sculpting for the kids? The questions consumed him. He flipped through his notes from the session, desperately searching for clues on how to ignite that same spark. Inspirational quotes, techniques for fostering creativity. Everything felt superficial now, merely symbols of what he longed to become, not truths he could embody. As night rolled in, he could feel the weight of disappointment. Inadvertently, he'd been expecting some secret formula for success. Wasn't it about authenticity? Wasn't it about invoking the same courage the children had shown? Edward slid down to the floor, sitting cross-legged with his notebook spread open before him. "What makes me special?" he whispered to himself, the exercise mirrored in the simplicity of Lily's question. His mind buzzed. He had spent years downplaying his own strengths to shield himself from judgment and rejection. In trying to guide the children to their creativity, was he overlooking the raw potential within his own heart? In the stillness of his room, he unspooled the narrative he had clung to for so long, one where isolation shielded him from pain but kept him from the brightness of connection. Each stroke of his pen transformed self-doubt into clarity. He began to jot down fragments of his own story, moments of his childhood, the fleeting joy of imagination before reality intruded. Even in that moment he found sparks of enthusiasm emerging from his ink. When had he last allowed the child within him to dream without caution? His focus returned to the drawings the kids created. Jamie's dragon, Lily's superhero, each became a reflection of their inner worlds, resonating with resilience and bravery. They had embraced their quirks unapologetically, and yet here he was, haunted by a fear of being perceived as quirky or vulnerable. This newfound understanding breathed life into a revelation. Perhaps he too carried heroism within, although it had been stifled by doubt and self-judgment.
Edward's resolve sparked anew. If he could confront his past hesitations, maybe he could teach others to shine their light without fear. The next morning brought another sunrise, and he now approached the meeting spot with a sense of urgency. Ideas woven into the fabric of his new confidence surged with excitement. He could share his experiences, not so others could emulate him, but to reveal the magic of authenticity in their stories. In doing so, he might uncover the extraordinary in the mundane that each child possessed, drawing strength from vulnerability at every jump of imagination. As he arrived, there were no lingering shadows of fear. With every heartbeat, the lessons he'd discovered echoed back to him, illuminating the purpose within his quest. In the din of laughter and shouts of excitement, he stepped forward, prepared to take them to new depths. "Today," he stated confidently, "we will not just create characters. We will share who we are, our own adventures, our delights, and even our fears." The children's eyes widened in curiosity. In a world where insecurities often suffocated creativity, Edward had invited them to explore each other's truths. But just as he busied himself with the activity, a sudden unease struck him. How would they respond when he revealed his own doubts, the layers he'd kept hidden? As he pushed forward, he couldn't shake the feeling that unveiling his vulnerabilities could either strengthen their connections or splinter them entirely. The weight of his own story was yet to unravel, and the children's reactions loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. Would he find affirmation in vulnerability, or would the dawning of truth send those innocent expressions of admiration into retreat? Edward's heart raced with the anticipation of the unforeseen, marveling at the exhilarating tension of tomorrow. The time had come to confront the depths of his fears, while navigating the intricate tapestry of relationships he had yearningly spun. How many truths awaited him, ready to be unearthed? The morning sun brightened the sky, casting a golden hue on the world around Edward. He stood in front of the children, feeling an electric charge bounce between them and him. His heart thrummed in concert with the laughter and chatter, underscoring the infinite potential for connection. With each confident beat, he could feel the weight of his fears begin to lift, replaced by an eagerness to share not just guidance, but experiences that would allow the children to see the strength in vulnerability. "Let's start with a little exercise," he said, his voice steady. I want each of you to think about a story from your life that made you feel brave or scared. We're not just sharing characters, we're sharing what makes those characters come alive. As he spoke, he observed the children's lively expressions transform into contemplative frowns and bright eyes sparkling with ideas.
It was in those moments of contemplation that he found reassurance. They too wrestled with the complexities of fear and creativity, just like he did. Perhaps his own vulnerability would not only resonate with them, but help them embrace theirs. He shared his own story, a tale from his youth depicting a fierce snowstorm that had veiled his neighborhood in white. He recounted his reckless dare to venture out alone, feeling a mix of fear and excitement with each step into the swirling chaos. The children listened, captivated, their imaginations painting vivid images of that day. Edward could see them beginning to understand the essence of courage. It lay not in the absence of fear, but in the bravery that surged in its presence. Now, he continued, who wants to share a moment from their life? The room filled with an anticipatory hush, each child eager but hesitant. Edward recognized that many shared his trepidation when it came to exposing their vulnerabilities. He had opened the door, but it was up to each child to step through. Lily raised her hand cautiously. I was scared when my puppy ran away. I searched everywhere, but I didn't give up. Her voice quivered, echoing the raw emotion that seemed to linger in the air. Edward admired her courage, the quiet strength in voicing her fear. Why didn't you give up? He prompted gently. Because he was my friend, and I loved him. The simplicity and depth of her answer rippled through the room. Edward felt a shocking jolt of understanding. They were all friends. He had invited them to share their truths, but he had to reciprocate. He took a deep breath, prepared to share the insecurities he had spent a lifetime dodging. Sometimes, he began, his voice wavering slightly, I feel like a fraud. I'm often afraid that I don't have what it takes to unlock your creativity. I worry you'll see me as just someone pretending. His admission hung in the air, more profound than he anticipated. The children's surprised expressions transformed into understanding. Jamie raised his hand. But you make us feel brave. In that moment, Edward's heart swelled with gratitude, yet anxiety gnawed at him. How could it be that his raw honesty, so carefully guarded, was met with acceptance? He encouraged the children to share how they felt about vulnerability, reigniting their discussions. Secrets spilled like a rushing brook, fears of failure, of being different, of feeling misunderstood. The room thrummed with a new energy, a mix of their insecurities and his, weaving their stories together into a tapestry of shared human experience. Edward's anxiety began to morph. Each story, an affirmation of empowerment, echoed the courage he witnessed in them. They were not just children, they were little explorers, charting the depths of their own pasts, facing fears and painting landscapes of bravery with their words.
But in the back of his mind lingered questions. Would their acceptance hold as he ventured deeper into the shadows of his fears? And just how much of his story could he afford to reveal without fear of rejection? As their sharing session drew to a close, Edward knew the journey towards emotional honesty was only just beginning, both for him and for the children. What truths would emerge from confronting the fears he had long buried? The answers loomed ahead, daring him to step even further into the light of vulnerability. The following week began with a sense of urgency in Edward's heart. Each session with the children had transformed him in ways he had never anticipated. Their shared stories painted a portrait of a community rich with dreams, hopes, and fears, all too familiar to him. Yet even as connections deepened, doubt lingered,
felt tightening like a vice around his thoughts. As he arrived at their meeting place, the eager faces of the children greeted him. The buoyant energy coursing through them filled the air with palpable excitement. Mia waved, her grin a beacon of encouragement, reminding him of the light his daughter had brought into his life. He tucked away his anxieties and focused on the task at hand, facilitating a space for not only their growth, but his own. "Today," he began, his voice steady, "we'll explore the journeys our fears take us on. Sometimes confronting our fears can lead us to the most beautiful places." As the children settled into their usual circle, Edward invited them to reflect on the idea of facing fears and turning them into opportunities for growth. He shared a story from his life that had haunted him since childhood, a classic tale of missing out because of fear, the regret of sitting on the sidelines during a school play because he was too afraid to audition. "I often think about how much joy I missed simply because I allowed fear to dictate my choices," he admitted. The honesty of his words resonated in the circle, every child listening intently as they began to understand that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a bridge connecting their experiences. Mia, emboldened by Edward's honesty, spoke up. "Like when I was scared to climb the big slide, I thought I'd fall, but once I did it, I felt like I was flying." One by one, the children shared their own stories of fear, of trying new foods, of presenting in class, of standing up for their friends. With each shared vulnerability, Edward felt a sense of liberation wash over him. They were learning not only to conquer their fears, but also to inspire others to do the same. Yet with every revelation, a shadow of uncertainty flickered in Edward's mind. Would he have the strength to continue this path of openness? What would happen when the thrill of creativity collided with the realities of their struggles? As the session concluded, he posed a challenge. "Let's work on a performance about our fears, a play where we confront them and show how they can lead to growth." Excited murmurings echoed through the group. The idea ignited an energetic spark, and Edward felt the familiar warmth of purpose envelop him. But it was accompanied by a nagging apprehension. Would he be able to guide them through crafting a performance that honored their raw experiences while embracing their diverse interpretations of courage? That night, sleeplessness gnawed at him as he reflected on Annie's ambitions. No longer searching for redemption solely through wealth, he yearned to build something that honored not just her memory, but everything he had learned from these children. They had become his teachers in courage, and he longed to bring their collective vision to life. The next meeting started with excitement buzzing in the air, and the children gathered around him, bursting with ideas. They were eager to transform their stories into something larger than themselves. "You can be the villain," Jamie chuckled, pointing at Edward, laughter bubbling through the crowd. "We can face our fears together." "Or the mentor," another suggested, recognizing the duality of growth inherent in his role. Edward chuckled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "It seems I have a lot of stealing to do, but together, let's explore who we can become." As the days turned into weeks, Edward and the children worked alongside one another, blending their stories, fears, and joys into a cohesive expression of their identity. Each rehearsal unveiled another layer of connection, pulling him deeper into the fabric of their world. Nightmares still haunted him, of failure and loss, but he began to see them as stepping stones rather than obstacles. Each time his insecurities crept in, Edward reminded himself that sharing his vulnerabilities was not just a necessary task, it was a commitment to growth. Lily's questions echoed in his mind, urging him to turn inward, to allow the courage he admired in the children to seep into his own being. One day, after rehearsing for the upcoming performance, a hush fell over the group. Edward sensed the weight of shared anticipation. "What if I mess up on the big day?" Jamie asked, his eyes wide with apprehension. "You won't," Mia chimed in, fiercely, "because we're all here together. And even if we do mess up, isn't that part of the fun?" "Yes," Edward interjected, full of conviction. "Even when things go wrong, it creates an opportunity to learn. Mess-ups become stories we can share, too." As the day of the performance approached, Edward felt empowered by their collective spirit. It enveloped him, transforming his fears into a tapestry of inspiration. The children were not just supporting him, they were leading him, guiding him to forge a path through the fog of uncertainty. On opening night, the community center buzzed with excitement. Families filled the seats, anticipation hanging in the air like a tantalizing aroma. Edward stood backstage, watching the children bring their stories to life, feeling his heart swell with pride. Each moment celebrated their evolution, not just as performers, but as a community of fearless dreamers. With every line spoken and each fear confronted, Edward felt an unwavering sense of belonging. It wasn't about him overcoming his past, it was about collectively embracing the spirit of courage that had anchored them. When the curtain fell, thunderous applause erupted, engulfing him and the children in a wave of affirmation. The performance was not only a success, it was a testament to the transformative power of vulnerability and community. As he took center stage, amidst the chaos of laughter, tears, and joy, he felt it. This was his moment of achievement, not defined by wealth or status, but by the bonds formed, the connections strengthened, and the collective journeys undertaken. It was a moment where he had conquered the hesitations of his past and stepped into the light of shared triumph. As he looked into the eyes of each child, gratitude flooded his heart. Edward had done more than honor his daughter's memory. He had become a vessel of transformation. Together, they had crafted a burgeoning legacy, paving the way for not only their growth, but for future generations. The final round of applause rumbled like distant thunder, but within Edward, a powerful truth resonated. He was ready to embrace life's uncertainties, knowing that he no longer faced them alone. In this journey, he had discovered that courage could illuminate even the darkest paths, offering hope, healing, and an undeniable sense of belonging. Edward had finally achieved not just personal growth, but meaningful connection, an enduring testament to the legacy his daughter had inspired him to build. Now, as the lights began to dim, he was overcome by a sense of peace and fulfillment. This was the man he was meant to be, a father, a mentor, and a lifelong learner, forever drawn to the light ignited by love and community. So, if you want to be a part of stories that celebrate transformation and growth, you need to subscribe now to the channel, ensuring you never miss an incredible journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support emotional stories that matter. Comment below your reactions and theories about Edward's journey and how you personally connect with themes of overcoming challenges. And most importantly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, showing them the power of embracing vulnerability and the beauty of human connection. Don't wait even one more second to make this impact.